So, welcome to Engage for Success. We're holding a blab to talk about our radio show. We've done a test blab, which wasn't supposed to be a test one, but we did it, and we're giving it another go now. So we wanted to talk to you about the radio show. I'm here with my co-host Jo Moffat from Woodreed.
Hello.
And we're really going to talk to you a bit about what the radio show is and some of the details of our favourite shows. And Jo's got a little story about an experience she had this week as well about the whole employee engagement thing as well. So we'll cover that. For those of you who don't know, Engage for Success is a national movement that's all around spreading the word about employee engagement and shining a light on good practice, and we're supported across the country in the public, private and third sectors. We have a task force that sets the strategy for the movement, a small core team who implements the things that we've agreed we're going to do, and then we have a lot of support and energy around the country with people who basically volunteer, come along to events, do things like Jo helping to host the radio show and producing content for the website and coming on the radio show as guests. So we've been running the show now, I found out today, since December 2012. I thought it was January, so we're coming up to our third birthday in December, and we run it on a weekly basis on a Monday at 5:30 live, and we're up to show 133. I just did that one this week. We just don't do them on bank holiday Mondays. We're not that committed, are we, Jo?
Not quite. No rest otherwise.
So we're thinking about using Blab for the shows. We currently do them through Blog Talk Radio, and we host them there and also on SoundCloud, on iTunes and on our website as well. And we're just thinking that this might be a quite nice use of Blab to actually be able to see our interviewees and perhaps at some stage bring some other people into the conversation as interviewees actually in Blab, you know, all of the 4 seats, but also the fact that we can use the messaging and the chat to perhaps, you know, get questions and so on as we're going through the show. So that's sort of the purpose of today, but we wanted to make it a valuable experience by sharing some content and some good ideas of some of the shows that we recommend you go back and listen to if you're interested. So Jo, do you want to give it a start to explain your involvement?
Thank you. Yeah, it's the Jo and Jo show, really, which does get a bit complicated sometimes. But so I first got roped into this by Jo, as I was one of the sort of regular listeners of the show in the early weeks, wasn't I? And at that point, there used to be a kind of Google channel behind it, which we were able to kind of comment and ask live questions and that kind of thing, but it didn't really sort of stay the course. But
you were our most popular commentator, which is I think why you ended up here.
Which is why I got roped in by you. So I wasn't involved from the very beginning. I was obviously certainly very interested and interested in what Engage for Success were doing from the beginning, because certainly as far as the team here at Woodreed are concerned, there's always been a considerable level of interest and belief and enthusiasm for the whole kind of principle of Engage for Success, for employee engagement rather. So when the whole sort of Engage for Success movement began, and that grew out of the McLeod and Nita, David McLeod and Nita's report into employee engagement called Engaging for Success. It was a bit like a kind of light bulb moment of hallelujah, there's someone else out there who actually gets this. So always been really interested in Engage for Success. It's been a fabulous 2.5 years actually that I've been involved in hosting the show with Jo. And I was just kind of thinking back on some of my favorites, and there's been a lot actually. There's been some really, really good shows, and it's sort of hard to pull out a few, but I've had Jackie Connor from Sainsbury's talking about how they've sponsored the Paralympics in 2012 and just how they use that prior to and post 2012 to really engage their people. And I know one of Jo's shows sort of all around one of Jo's favourite shows is around 2012 as well. I've had clients on, my own clients from Volkswagen, Julie State, Fiona Roberts from Volkswagen and Volkswagen Financial Services, who've been talking about employee voice. I've had Hugh Fenn and Carly from Moat Housing, again, talking about tapping into employee voice. But it's not just been my own clients. It's not just been when I've been talking to people that I know. I've interviewed and got to know some really interesting and interested people, people from the practitioner side of the fence, as well as people from the supplier or guru or academic side of the fence. And also along the way, we've had some really great feedback, I think, haven't we, Joe? Lots of really positive feedback from guests, but particularly really positive feedback from people who listen to the show, whether it's live or whether they download it on archives. We get emails in. I meet people at events who come up to me and say, "Oh, I really love listening to the show. I find it a really good way to actually see what's going on in the wider world." And I really enjoy being part of it. So it's quite exciting to be trying something new, trying some new media. But looking back, I think one of my all-time favourites, probably just because of its sheer silliness, was the Christmas show in 2013. Do you remember that one? We had Mark Ellis, who's very involved with was very involved with Engagement Success.
Still
is. He was Santa Claus, Father Christmas. He came on the show.
Elf engagement, wasn't it?
Exactly that, elf engagement. It was ridiculous, but very funny. And we had lots of people who had pre-recorded Christmas carols that they'd written specifically around employee engagement and sung with their people, and then they emailed those in.
That was just amazing, the efforts people went to send us audio that we could play on the show. I'd forgotten. I remembered we asked lots of questions, didn't we? We asked what would be your New Year's resolution and what are you hoping for Christmas, but from an employee engagement point of view. I remembered those bits, but I'd completely forgotten the entertaining parts.
well, I think the beauty of it was we didn't actually ask them to do carols and songs. We asked those sorts of questions, what would be at the top of your wish list for employee engagement for Christmas, and those sorts of things. And actually some of them responded to those questions in choral form, and it was great. But I think, that was fun. But there's a serious message behind all this as well, which is, as you said at the opening, Joe, about shining a light on best practice. But actually, it's actually taking a step back from that as well, and actually still having to position and explain why employee engagement matters. So it's not just about shining a light on best practice and sharing it. It's actually getting people to actually understand that this is something that matters, and it does have a direct impact on business success. And I was actually in a meeting yesterday, funnily enough, where I was told in no uncertain terms that employee engagement is old hat. It's been around for ages. There's nothing new. It's old hat. It doesn't work. Don't believe in the 4 enablers. And anyone that does, particularly me, is incredibly naive to think that these could possibly make any kind of difference, and certainly not transform an organisation. So you can imagine the debate was quite impassioned. I was there with my colleague, my strategic planning director, Charlotte, and she and I gave a good fist of the argument, and we did our very best. But I have to say, we did have to retreat, having failed miserably to persuade this chap of the veracity of what we were arguing. We offered to send him Nailing the Evidence. That's that nice little bit of bedtime reading that Engage for Success has produced, but he declined that as well. So, and apparently if I'd ever been a CEO in a large organisation, I'd realise just how silly all this stuff is. So that was nice. Anyway.
I was at an event last night where somebody from a university was talking, and I was talking about... I was talking, and she brought up in the middle of the employee voice section when I was talking about the enabler that she thought that it was overly simplistic, and that organisations are big and complex, and it's not as simple as I was sort of making out. And I said I wasn't saying it's easy, but there are some simple principles about listening to people is not just doing a survey and asking for them to give you information. It's about firstly what you do with that information, but it's actually not even necessarily about a survey. It's about how you go about your daily work and encourage people to be involved in what's happening in the organisation and share that information just as a normal course of events because you're open to it and they know that. And of course, as I was saying, it does sound very simple. It's quite hard to do, particularly in big public sector organisations, which is where she was coming from. But I just shared one of the shows that I did with Chris Barton from South West, I think it's called, in St George's, that went out in summer. I haven't got the show number, but if you just do a search for Chris Barton and NHS, it will come up. And he was talking about how much success they've been having with their employee voice, the program they've been running called Listening in Action, and that really was fundamental to their improved employee engagement. So she said, yes, you mentioned that, but
yeah,
but let's look at it and take what we can from it, because there are clearly places where employee engagement is working really well in some of the really big, complex, difficult organisations, and that was one of them.
Well, we've had, haven't we? We've had a couple of guests in the past on from Serco, actually, who've talked about the difficulties of engaging remote workforces, people who are not office based, people who are not PC bound, that kind of thing. But so I was kind of pretty fired up after.
You mentioned Serco, and just interestingly, somebody in the questions or in the comments has just said, do you think an employer's ability to outsource can have a positive or negative impact on employee engagement? And actually, Serco is an outsourcing organisation, isn't it? So interesting that you mentioned that just as that question was being asked. And
yes,
I don't know your thoughts. I mean, yes, obviously it does have an impact. It could be a positive one, it could be a negative one.
It could be either, I would say.
Managed, and the culture of the organisation and the culture of the organisation that you're outsourcing to, I would consider.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a bit off-putting, isn't it, getting questions along the way. I'm not sure I can actually talk to camera and think about answering it and typing an answer at the same time. So I'm just going to have to answer it. But I think it's interesting because this is one of the questions we've had on one of the shows with Serco, actually, particularly, but it applies to all those sorts of outsourcing companies, and there's obviously lots of them, is this kind of challenge between when do they try to get their people to engage with the company for whom they are delivering the service, or are they engaged with the person that's paying their salary at the end of the month? And I know from conversations I've had with clients of mine who are in that kind of scenario that actually they go to great lengths, and particularly as part of the bid process, to explain to a prospective client how they are going to engage their people, how they might engage employees that they've tupied across, how they will engage them with the end user clients and align them with their culture. Whilst at the same time, of course, at the back of their minds, they've also got to keep them aligned to whoever the provider is. So it is quite complex. It's not simple, but none of this is simple. As you picked up on it, nobody said it was simple, nobody said it was easy, but there are some principles and some ways, and it takes care, it takes commitment, it takes time. I think anyone who's expecting quick wins is living in cloud cuckoo land, really. So I was really fired up when I got home last night after this meeting, because I don't like losing, obviously. And one of the things I was just kind of flicking back through the shows, and I was struck, but particularly by a couple that just jumped out at me, really, because they were both shows that I did with CEOs in what I would call quite hard-nosed, difficult, industrial, manly, boysy, kind of dirt under your fingernailsy type industries, and yet these were CEOs who absolutely got the importance of engaging their people and put people at the heart of how they run their business. So the first one was show number 108, a guy called Mark Horsley, CEO of company called NGN, who is National Gas Networks, and they're basically responsible. They've got 1,500 people, and they're responsible for something like 37 kilometers of gas pipelines. That's what they do. Their people are out there keeping the gas running. And when he took over, employee engagement was utterly at rock bottom. Not only that, but customer satisfaction levels were through the floor as well. And he went through a process by listening to his people, really playing to employee voice, by empowering his people, by involving his people, by letting them feel part of where this organisation was going, sharing his vision for where they were going. Nothing overly complicated. He didn't do a programme on them. He just applied principles and did things. And he has absolutely turned that organisation round. They're now recognised as having the highest employee engagement levels of any utility company. They've also got the highest levels of customer satisfaction as well. And in terms of real business results, it's been transformed, and it's been transformed by a CEO in an industry where you would think there might be that kind of level of cynicism, who utterly gets it. The other guy that I really enjoyed having on the show was a chap called Daksh Gupta, and that was back in August last summer, show number 77. And Daksh is CEO of Marshall's Group, and they're the second largest retailer, car dealership retailer in the UK. And apart from the fact he nearly gave me a heart attack because he'd been stuck in a traffic jam and actually only dialed into the show as the closing notes of the opening jingle were playing, again, he was a guy that really, really got the importance of putting his people at the heart of what he was trying to do with his business. And what he was trying to do was transform the business, not from a position of failure to success, but in terms of its whole shape and structure. He was trying to turn it from a regional car retailer group to a national one. And he knew that to do that, he had to have his people at the heart of what he was doing. And again, in the show, listen to it if you want to, he talks about how he genuinely put people at the heart of what he did, how he made sure that he plays to those four enablers. And again, fabulous results directly as a result of what he did. Reductions in turnover, staff attraction, business results, proper measurable business KPIs as a result. So, it's there. If you only open your eyes to the evidence, it's there to be seen. So.
Absolutely. And I had an example with Simon Biltcliffe, who is in the show 81. Let me just check my notes. Yeah, 81. He's the MD of an organisation. He turned round. He started it from nothing and didn't take external investment. It was all self-funded. And he's an SME. They've got about 50 employees. And the title of the show was Create Value with Capitalism and Share It Using Marxism. They like to make money, but then they like to share it within the organisation, within the teams. And, it's a really interesting way of operating. And they have some really sort of funky stuff going on as well. So the one that really sort of I talk about a lot when I'm out and about talking about employee engagement is they have something called a happyometer. And like you go to the services and go to the toilet and you can sort of press to say whether you're happy or sad when you come out of the toilets. They have something like that on their wall in the office, and people can do that. And it not only gives them within the organisation that view of how people are feeling when on a daily basis, they actually put that live on their website, so we could go and look at it now, and we know how everyone's feeling today, or certainly the people who bothered to press it, which I guess are the ones that are either really happy or really
not. Yeah.
It is realistic. If you look at it, it's not all yellow, happy, sunny. They do have days where they've got complete blue, or purple, whichever one it is, which is the, had enough, terrible day sort of thing. And they've got like a wheel of fortune, and they have, I think it's £1,000 a month, and they spin the wheel. All the employees are on the wheel, and whoever ends up on the place where it stops gets the money. So they have lots of sort of quite sort of interesting things that I guess you're going to say wouldn't be possible in a big NHS or something like that. But his sort of drive and energy and the way that he works with his team, not in a hierarchical way, but just as part of the team, is just really interesting. And it's a great show. He's completely mad, and it's a really interesting,
refreshing,
I would say. Yeah, exactly. So that's one.
Yeah, it was another one actually that really, I think, inspired me personally and professionally, and that was show 124, Jane Ginniver, and she came on and she talked about flexible working, and she talked with such enthusiasm and such passion and such commitment. And I have to say, I've always thought flexible working, it's about getting mums back to work, and anyone who knows me will know that that's something we've always tried to do at Woodreed wherever we possibly can. But it was much, much more than that. It's about flexible working for everybody, so that flexibility of where you work, when you work, how you work. And she was able to talk with real sense, real sort of sense about how you could really make this work, and how it could work not just in a sort of relatively small service industry company, but any sector, any kind of organisation. And again, being able to measure and point to real productivity gains, profitability gains, employee engagement. That's going to be your measure. But at the end of the day, actually, my belief is you shouldn't, you measure other things. Employee engagement is the thing that gets you the other KPIs. So, but she was really inspiring, and it really inspired me as a business owner to actually come back here and think, well, how can we actually apply some of those principles here? So I get a lot out of it myself, and I hope that listeners get a lot out of listening to the people that we have on the show. Actually, who else have you inspired you up?
Yeah, so the other two that I've got on my list was Phil Sherwood, who was responsible for the Games Makers program at the Olympics, as you mentioned earlier. And that is actually our most listened to show, and it's show 20, so it was right back in the summer of 2013. And what I just thought was really interesting with that was how they doing something that now we know is really successful. And if you said now try and be a games maker, you'd probably get even more applications than they had at the time. But they had to start 2 years before the Olympics. They didn't really know what it was going to look like. They had to get people engaged when they weren't going to be getting expenses. They had to pay for their own travel and their uniforms and so on. They actually were telling them they wouldn't get to see any of the sport. They'd be in the toilet or on the train station or platform or whatever.
Very motivational.
Yeah, he said they used the Shackleton way of recruiting, where he said something like, going on a cold long journey and you might not come back type thing. I don't think it was quite that bad. But, and then he talks about how they engaged people during the 10 days of the Olympics and communicated and set things up, because they literally had a very small window to get it right. You don't have a long period of time to sort of develop things and make it all work properly. They had a very short period of time. They were completely in the spotlight, and as we now know, it was a real success. And he reports in that show about what they actually did, which was really good. So I really enjoyed that one. And then the other one was show 100, which interesting. We said at the time we should have done something about it being show 100, but actually we got a good show in for that. So but just by chance, it was one of our really good shows. And that's Mark McCurgo, and he talks about leading as a host, about new roles of engagement. And he's written a book about it, and he basically talks about how leadership used to be very much about leading from the front, hero leadership. I'm right, I know everything, follow me. And then we've gone through various iterations of leadership, including things like servant leadership, where we're serving the customer and everyone within the organization are serving the people who are serving the customer. And he's talking about host leadership as a metaphor. If you think about if you're hosting a party and you invite your guests into your house, you're eating the same food as them, you're talking to people, but you're not presenting to them. You're trying to encourage people to talk to each other, and you're trying to help build relationships within the party. It's not all about you, and there's certainly no hierarchy, but you are trying to facilitate things happening, because if you don't do that, then quite often it either isn't a very good party or it's not quite the party you intended.
Could be either.
So really interesting metaphor. Thanks. And something that's quite easy for us all to understand, because most of us have been to a few parties and hosted a few parties in our time. So that was a really interesting show as well. But as you say, there's just so many, and we interviewed people who are in corporates, in practitioner roles, about case studies about the things that they're doing. And as you say, they're not always like perfect scenarios. Like there was one show, and I can't remember which one it is, where I remember the person was particularly open and honest about how challenging this stuff is and how they hadn't cracked it. They had some really
right yet.
Things that they were doing, but they were saying, we get it wrong all the time. and he actually gave some examples of that. But then we have, as you say, these sort of academics. We have consultants and people that provide tools that can help with employee engagement and other related areas. And then sometimes we have people from within the movement, so like Kathy, who actually co-hosts for us when neither of us are available. Our exec director will come and talk about what we're doing, and in fact she's on the show next week because we're talking about the conference, so she'll be back on next week. So
what's the conference then, Jo?
So the conference is on the 24th of November. It's our first big conference since the go live, which was in November 2012. So we're sort of 3 years on. It's at the QE2 Centre in London. So nice big affair. And we've got some great speakers. Just to give you some examples, we've got David Halpern, who's from the Behavioural Insight team at the Cabinet Office, so number 10. And he's talking about how improved employee engagement and behavioural insight can radically change how an organisation innovates and how it engages with its customers. And then we've got Alex Edmonds, who's a professor of finance at the London Business School, who's also a TED speaker. And he's talking about the financial impact of having highly engaged staff in organisations and how it can improve business performance, sustainability, employee wellbeing and social responsibility. And then we've got some case studies that we've just announced. We've got Tanith Dodge, who's the Director of HR at Marks and Spencer, coming through a case study for us, and also John Timpson of Timpsons. So it's really shaping up to be a really, really great agenda. And if you want to find out more, then you just need to go to engageforsuccess.org/2015 conference. And somebody said to me yesterday, is it extortionate prices? And it's not. We're trying to get as many people to come along as we want. So certainly in terms of corporate pricing, it's nowhere near that. I'm not sure if the early bird offer is still on, but that's 199 I think, and 250 I think is the price one. We're not on the early bird, so trying to get as many people along as we can to share the message. And we are doing something that's also new, so we're trying out Blab. We're so cutting edge,
we are.
And we're trying out something called Thunderclap, which for everyone here who's on Twitter, it's a way of sending a communication out all at the same time through the online platform. So basically you just need to go to the Thunderclap platform, and you can go to it via engageforsuccess.org/Thunderclap. And when you go there, it says, yes, I'd like to support via Twitter or via Facebook, and you click through, and basically it then sort of records that you want to support, and it sets it all up so that on the date that we're going to go live with the status update, which is a week on Monday, it will at midday tweet for everybody and Facebook for everybody all at the same time. So you don't have to do anything once you've set it up.
Okay.
We can get 250 people who have gone in and said that they're willing to support. It then will just do that automatically. And I think at the moment we're up to a reach of something like 100,000 or something like that already on the numbers that we've got. So we're hoping that we can get the 250. So if you're watching and you're on Twitter, please go to engageforsuccess.org/Thunderclap and give it a go. If for no other reason that you can actually try out the functionality of the website.
I'll do it. I will go there after this. So, and I think the other thing we want to try and do, again, trying this out as opposed to just doing it audio. Obviously, apart from the obvious, which means we have to actually get dressed to do it and not come and do the interview in our pajamas. We have to brush our hair and all that kind of stuff. But it's about trying something new. So it's also about trying to get some new guests. As I say, and as Joe said, we've had some great people over the last nearly 3 years. Whether you've got a great story to tell from inside your own organisation, or you have worked with a number of organisations and you've done something that's been consistently delivered across all of them, we want to hear from you, and we would like you to get in touch and tell us that you'd like to be on the show. So sometimes we go out and look for guests, but more often than not, they approach us, don't they, Joe?
They do. So if you're interested in being involved, as long as whatever you want to talk about has a link to employee engagement, then please do get in touch, and just email me, joe@engageforsuccess.org, and let me know your thoughts and what you'd like to talk about. We're actually booking into February now, so we're sort of way ahead of ourselves at the moment. And also let us know if you think this is a good platform, a good way to do the show. Let us know. We're, as I said, I think at the beginning, we're on Blog Talk Radio, we're on SoundCloud, we're on iTunes, and we're on our own website with our shows. We're thinking this might be a good way to start the show and record it here and then use it in the other places. If you're interested and you think that's a good idea, it'd be great to get that sort of feedback as well. And the one thing we didn't mention, Joe, was our next Christmas show.
Oh yes, exactly. So it's a kind of extension, isn't it, of one of the shows that we did a couple of years ago.
We talked about the beginning.
Yeah.
We talked about how we had the people sending in the singing, the carols for us, which we weren't expecting, and we thought was quite fun. And it's sort of come about through another event. So the core team got involved through Kathy, our exec director, who's a Morris dancer, in a Morris dancing afternoon or morning or whenever it was. I know. I was a bit not sure, but it was
my bells.
Brilliant. Yeah, we didn't have bells. We had swords, wooden swords, and sticks. Right. Sticks were good, like fashion sticks. And it was just a really great team build, and really sort of added to our our own engagement within the team. And it just got me thinking. I thought about the Christmas show a couple of years ago. We didn't do one last year because Christmas apparently just suddenly appeared.
It just came, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It just crept up on us without us noticing. So we didn't do one last year. So I thought, right, we'll be organised this year. And we've been really lucky to get Sing and Inspire to come along and help us, who have been on a radio show, which you can tell us about in a minute ago. So they're going to come on the 14th of December in the afternoon, and we're going to get a group of people together. We need a venue. If anyone's got a venue, let us know. Bearing in mind we're a not-for-profit and we have no money. And we're going
volunteers.
to rehearse some Christmas songs in harmony, and then part of the show we'll be performing the songs, and then also we'll be doing some interviews with Sing and Inspire and the people involved about the process and how they work and how it's worked for us as a team. But you interviewed them, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago now. We interviewed them because they use choral singing as they go into companies and help them to create in-house choirs. And interestingly enough, I saw them on YouTube a couple of weeks ago because they've been one of their major clients they work for is Admiral, who make all the strips for football teams, rugby teams and stuff. And they did a mob, flash mob thing at Victoria Station a couple of weeks ago as part of the Rugby World Cup. And they had them all appearing from out of the crowd, taking off their outdoor coats, revealing their Welsh rugby shirt, and they all sang the Welsh national anthem. And it was fabulous. It was, it was really one of those things that obviously went viral, and I thought, I know who you are, and it was to Sing and Inspire people. So really good actually. So that should be fun.
Yeah, so they're coming along to help us out on the 14th. So we will be opening it up to anybody who wants to come and join in. We're hoping it might be 30 or 40 people. And I'm hoping that it'll be limited numbers, and you'll have to be first come, first served, because there'll be so many people who want to join in. Or maybe it'll just be me and you, Joe.
Well, look at all the little thumbs up clapping signs at the bottom of our pictures here. We've obviously got 94 people already who love what we're talking about. So that's 94 people who are going to join us.
Or 94 presses of the button. I'm not sure 94. And they weren't doing it for the music show, remember? So it might be that they quite liked the conversation and employee engagement, but they're still not going to come and sing at the Christmas show. But we'll see.
We'll see.
Excellent. So I think we've covered everything we wanted to.
I think we have.
And we've recorded it this time.
We have. And so follow us on Twitter at Engage for Success or at Tumwells Woodies for me. And then when I'm co-hosting it, I will be appearing as at Engage for Success. So it's been great. It's been fun. Thank you very much.
Yeah, brilliant. If you've got any feedback, Joe at engageforsuccess.org. And as I say, if you want to come on the show, do let us know. So thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Bye.
Bye.